The conference room at Apex Industrial smelled of stale coffee and corporate betrayal. Mike Thompson, 58, sat ramrod straight, his calloused hands folded on the polished mahogany table. For 18 years, he'd been the senior financial controller at Apex, a Wisconsin-based manufacturer once renowned for crafting the toughest heavy-duty machinery in the Midwest. His graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses gave him the look of a high school math teacher, but his mind was a steel trap for numbers. Every ledger, every transaction, every cent. He'd kept Apex books cleaner than a church on Sunday. Now Abigail Harper, the new VP of Operations, didn't even bother looking up from her sleek tablet as she delivered the blow. Due to the strategic realignment, your position is being phased out, Michael. Her voice was crisp, like she was reading a weather report. No eye contact, just a flick of her manicured finger across the screen. Ethan Caldwell, the CFO who'd swept in 6 months ago with a Harvard MBA and a penchant for disruptive innovation, slid a cardboard box across the table. "We'll need your key card and parking pass," he said, his tone as warm as the February wind outside. "Security's waiting to escort you to your office for personal items." Mike's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. 18 years. He'd survived recessions, mergers, and the time the factory floor flooded during a freak storm. He'd balanced budgets when the company was bleeding red, worked 80-hour weeks to meet audit deadlines, and never once fudged a number. And this was his reward: a sterile room, a box, and 2 suits who wouldn't know a wrench from a widget. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Michael?" Abigail finally glanced up, her blue eyes daring him to make a scene. She expected groveling, maybe a few tears to soothe her conscience. Mike stood, smoothing his navy tie, a Father's Day gift from his daughter Lauren, back when she was still in pigtails. "No, ma'am," he said, voice steady as granite. He tucked his battered leather briefcase under his arm, the one his late wife, Sarah, had bought him for their 10th anniversary. "I'll see myself out." Ethan's smirk faltered. "HR will be in touch about your severance package," he said, emphasizing severance like it was a golden parachute. Mike knew better. 5 years shy of full pension benefits, that package would be a slap in the face. Probably 3 months' pay, if he was lucky. As Mike stepped into the hall, a young security guard named Tyler shuffled forward, cheeks flushed. "Sorry about this, Mr. Thompson," he muttered, eyes on the floor. "Just doing my job." "Not your fault, son," Mike replied, his Wisconsin drawl softening the words. He glanced back at the glass-walled conference room where Abigail was already swiping through her tablet, Ethan leaning over to whisper something that made her laugh. The walk to his corner office felt like a funeral procession. Co-workers he'd known for decades, guys who'd shared beers at the company picnic, women who'd sent flowers when Sarah passed, suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. Only the hum of the fluorescent lights acknowledged him. In his office, Mike packed methodically, a framed photo of Sarah at the county fair, her smile brighter than the Ferris wheel lights, a coffee mug Lauren had painted in 3rd grade, chipped but sacred. His desk was Spartan otherwise, no golf trophies or motivational posters, just a calculator and a stack of ledgers. He placed the photo in the box, wrapping it in an old company newsletter. Then he reached into his briefcase and checked the small USB drive tucked in a hidden pocket. 3 years of data. Every questionable invoice, every shady wire transfer, every consulting fee to firms that didn't exist. He'd started saving it when Abigail and Ethan began their reign, when the numbers stopped adding up. See, Apex Industrial wasn't always a soulless machine. Back when old Jim Callahan ran the place, it was a family outfit. Jim would walk the factory floor every dawn, coffee in hand, inspecting welds and chatting with machinists. "Numbers don't lie, Mike," he'd say, clapping a meaty hand on Mike's shoulder. "You make sure our books tell the truth, and we'll keep building machines that last." Mike believed him. He joined Apex in his 30s, fresh off an accounting degree from UW-Madison, eager to prove himself. For 15 years he did. The company thrived, supplying tractors and excavators to farmers and contractors across the heartland. Employees got fair wages, solid benefits, and a Christmas bonus that wasn't just a gift card. Mike's spreadsheets were his pride, each cell a testament to honesty. Then Jim retired, and his kids sold Apex to a Chicago venture capital firm with a name like a sci-fi villain, Horizon Capital. The changes crept in slow at first. Cheaper steel from overseas, skipped maintenance on the assembly line, layoffs dressed up as efficiency gains. Mike raised flags, politely in memos nobody read. Then Abigail arrived, a corporate shark from a New York conglomerate, with Ethan as her right-hand man. They preached modernization and growth, but Mike saw the truth in the numbers. Corners cut, costs inflated, money funneled to shadowy vendors. He'd flagged it early. These payments to Summit Solutions, he'd said, at a quarterly review, pointing to a $200,000 0 cents wire transfer. No record of services rendered. Abigail had flashed a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "We're onboarding new partners, Michael. It'll reconcile." It never did. His emails went unanswered, and when he pressed Ethan in private, the CFO waved him off. "Focus on the big picture, Mike. Let's not sweat the small stuff." But Mike couldn't let it go. Numbers were his gospel. So he started a second set of books, not to cheat, but to track. Every anomaly, every red flag, backed up on that USB drive. He hadn't planned to use it, not at first. It was insurance, a way to sleep at night. But when Greg Larson from procurement whispered about duplicate invoices and got canned for performance issues 2 weeks later, Mike knew he was onto something bigger, something rotten. Now, as Tyler stood awkwardly by the door, Mike placed his keycard on the desk but kept the briefcase close. The USB drive felt heavier than it should, a tiny grenade of truth. He didn't know what he'd do with it yet, but he knew one thing. Abigail and Ethan thought they were sweeping out an old-school accountant who asked too many questions. They didn't know he was leaving with their secrets. The lobby was a blur of averted eyes. Machinists, secretaries, even the janitor who'd once fixed Mike's flat tire, they all looked away. 18 years of loyalty reduced to a walk of shame. Only when he reached his pickup truck, a '98 Ford with a dented fender, did Mike let himself exhale. He slid the box onto the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, staring at the factory's red brick facade. A small, grim smile tugged at his lips. They thought they'd buried him. But Mike Thompson wasn't done, not by a long shot. He turned the key, the engine rumbling to life, and drove into the gray Wisconsin dusk, carrying everything Apex's new bosses didn't want the world to see. The dashboard clock glowed 7:14 p.m. as Mike Thompson pulled into the driveway of his modest 2-bedroom ranch in Waukesha, Wisconsin. The house was dark, silent, a husk since Sarah's passing 3 years ago. He sat in his pickup, the engine ticking as it cooled, staring at the front door. For 18 years he'd come home to her laughter, her warmth, the smell of her famous chili simmering on the stove. Now there was nothing but echoes and a cardboard box of office relics on the passenger seat. Mike's chest tightened, not just from the sting of his termination at Apex Industrial, but from the weight of what he carried in his briefcase. A USB drive holding 3 years of secrets. Proof of fraud that could topple Abigail Harper and Ethan Caldwell's empire of lies. He wasn't sure what to do with it yet, but the thought of letting their corruption fester felt like betraying everything Sarah stood for. "Always do what's right, Mike," she'd say, her green eyes fierce with conviction. "The truth matters, even when it hurts." Inside, Mike set the box on the kitchen counter and poured a finger of bourbon from a bottle he saved for nights like this. The amber liquid burned, but it didn't dull the ache. He wandered to the living room where a faded photo of Sarah hung above the fireplace. She was laughing at a company picnic, her sundress catching the breeze, unaware of the cancer that would steal her 2 years later. Mike's throat closed. "What would you do, darlin'?" he whispered. He already knew. Sarah never tolerated dishonesty, whether it was a neighbor cheating at cards or a cashier shortchanging her at the grocery store. His phone buzzed, snapping him back. A text from his daughter Lauren, now 28 and a rising star at a Milwaukee law firm. "Dad, you okay? Tina from accounting called, said they fired you. What's going on?" Mike's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to shield her, to say it was just corporate nonsense. But Lauren was too sharp for that. "Restructuring. I'm fine, kiddo, call you tomorrow," he typed, hating the lie. Lauren's reply was instant. "That's BS. 18 years? We need to sue." Mike sighed. She had her mother's fire, but he wasn't ready for a courtroom brawl, not yet. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. Old Jim Callahan's words echoed in his head. Numbers don't lie, Mike, people do. Jim, the heart of Apex, had trusted him to keep the books honest. Mike had done that, even as Abigail and Ethan turned the company into a hollow shell, looting pensions and rigging contracts. He couldn't let their greed destroy the legacy of the workers who'd poured their lives into Apex. The bourbon sat untouched as Mike powered up his laptop. He plugged in the USB drive, its files a digital fortress of evidence, $500,000, 0 cents in payments to non-existent vendors, duplicate expense reports, consulting fees to a firm tied to Ethan's college buddy. But it was bigger than that. Last month, his assistant, Jenny Martinez, had slipped him a printout before she was reassigned to a dead-end role. It showed discrepancies in Apex military contracts, parts for Humvees that didn't meet safety specs. If true, soldiers' lives were at risk. Jenny's voice had trembled as she handed it over. "They're covering something up, Mike. Be careful." Careful. That word haunted him now. 2 days ago, he'd noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows glinting under the streetlight. It was gone by morning, but yesterday his bank called about failed login attempts using his social security number. Then, this morning, a text from an unknown number. "Back off, Thompson. We know what you have." His pulse quickened just thinking about it. They were watching, closing in, desperate to keep their house of cards standing. Mike's resolve hardened. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Chris, it's Mike Thompson. I need your help." Chris Novak, his old college roommate, was now a federal prosecutor in Chicago, specializing in white-collar crime. "Mike, it's been forever. You okay?" Chris's voice was warm but wary. Mike took a breath. "I've got evidence of fraud at Apex Industrial. Big stuff. Pension theft, fake contracts, maybe even defective military parts. But they're coming after me." There was a long pause. "Send me what you've got," Chris said, "and watch your back." The next morning, Mike met Jenny at a rundown diner off I-94, far from Apex's prying eyes. She slid into the booth, her face pale, eyes darting to the door. "They're shredding records, Mike," she whispered, passing him a new flash drive. "Backdating approvals, faking inventory logs. And the pension fund? They've been siphoning it for a year to prop up stock prices for a buyout." Her hands shook. "I saw an email about the military contract. They're shipping faulty brake components. If those fail—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Mike's stomach churned. This wasn't just greed. It was betrayal of the workers, the soldiers, the country. "You're risking everything, Jenny," he said. She gave a bitter laugh. "They're cutting my job next month. Figured I'd go down swinging." As Mike drove home, his phone rang, an unknown number. He answered, heart pounding. "Mike, it's Nate." Nate Rivera, a quality control tech who'd vanished from Apex a month ago. His voice was low, frantic. "Check the military contract files. The stress test data for the brake parts? It's forged. They're putting lives at risk. They threaten my family, Mike. I'm leaving town, but you need to stop them." The line went dead. Mike gripped the wheel, tears stinging his eyes. Not for himself, but for Nate, for Jenny, for the machinists whose pensions were being stolen, for the soldiers who might die because of Abigail and Ethan's lies. He thought of Sarah, her voice clear as a bell, "Do what's right," and Jim, who'd trusted him to protect Apex's soul. That night, Mike couldn't sleep. At 1 a.m., his security system pinged, "Motion in the backyard." He grabbed the baseball bat by his bed and crept to the window. A shadow moved near the garage, then vanished. His heart thundered. The next morning, he found his mailbox pried open, papers scattered. They weren't just watching anymore. They were closing the noose. By dawn, Mike was on the phone with Chris again. "It's worse than I thought," he said, relaying Nate's tip and Jenny's evidence. "Defective parts in military vehicles. We're talking lives, Chris." The prosecutor's voice was grim. "This is Department of Defense territory now. Send me everything, and I'm looping in DOD investigators. But Mike, you're in deep. They'll do anything to stop you." Mike hung up, staring at Sarah's photo. The fear was there, clawing at him, but so was something stronger, a fire kindled by loss, by loyalty, by the memory of a company that once stood for something. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for the truth, for the workers, for the soldiers whose lives hung in the balance, and he'd be damned if he let Abigail and Ethan win. Mike Thompson's hands trembled as he poured his morning coffee, the bitter aroma filling his Waukesha kitchen. It wasn't just the chill of the Wisconsin dawn or the sleepless nights haunted by shadows in his backyard. Today, he was walking into a lion's den. The USB drive, now copied and stashed in 3 secure locations, one with his daughter Lauren, one in a bank vault, and one with federal prosecutor Chris Novak, burned a hole in his conscience. Evidence of Apex Industrial's fraud, pension theft, and defective military parts sat ready to bring down Abigail Harper and Ethan Caldwell. But ready wasn't enough. Today, Mike had to make them confess. The past week had been a descent into paranoia. The black SUV reappeared outside his house, its engine idling like a predator's growl. His email was flooded with fake subscriptions, his credit card flagged for fraudulent charges. A brick had crashed through his garage window 2 nights ago, a note taped to it. Last warning. Mike's heart had pounded, but Sarah's voice steadied him. Do what's right. He thought of Nate Rivera, the quality control tech, who'd fled after exposing forged safety tests, and Jenny Martinez, risking her job to smuggle proof of pension looting. They were counting on him. So were the soldiers whose lives hung on those faulty brakes. Mike straightened his tie, Sarah's gift now a talisman, and called Chris. It's set, Chris said, voice taut. Lakeside Hotel, 9 a.m. The Magnolia room's wired, agents in place, DOD on standby. Get Abigail to talk, Mike, we need her on record. Mike swallowed. And if she smells a trap? Chris didn't sugarcoat it. She won't go quietly. Be sharp. At 8:45 AME, Mike pulled into the Lakeside Hotel's lot, its faux Victorian facade masking the high-stakes game inside. He'd chosen the spot carefully. Neutral ground, public but discreet, with meeting rooms perfect for surveillance. Federal agents, disguised as staff, nodded subtly as he entered. His briefcase felt like it weighed a ton, though it held only a decoy severance agreement and a pen rigged with a microphone. The real evidence was with Chris, ready to bury Apex. Abigail arrived at 9:02, her designer heels clicking on the hard wood. Ethan wasn't with her. Mike had insisted on one-on-one to keep her off balance. Her attorney, a wiry man with a shark's smile, trailed her. Michael, she purred, settling into a leather chair. I'm glad you've come to your senses. Her eyes, cold as Lake Michigan in January, betrayed nothing. She slid a non-disclosure agreement across the table, a severance check clipped to it. 5 months' pay for 18 years. A joke. Mike forced a weary nod, playing the defeated everyman. Just want to move on, Abigail. He flipped through the NDA's dense legalese designed to gag him forever. This covers everything, right? All company matters? Her smile was a blade. Everything. Sign and we're done. The attorney leaned in, glasses glinting. Standard terms, Mr. Thompson. Nothing to worry about. Mike's pulse thrummed. He set the pen down, voice steady but low. Even the pension fund? The money siphoned to inflate stock prices? Abigail's composure flickered, a crack in her porcelain mask. The attorney stiffened. I'm not sure what you're implying, Abigail said, too smooth. I'm not implying, Mike leaned forward, locking eyes. I'm talking about the $2 million 0 cents diverted from employee pensions. The forged safety tests for the Humvee brakes. The fake vendors you and Ethan funneled cash to. His voice rose, each word a hammer. Does this NDA cover me reporting federal crimes? The room went still. Abigail's hand twitched toward her phone, but Mike pressed on. I've got 3 years of records, Abigail, every wire, every invoice, every lie. The DOD knows about the brakes. The FBI's got your financials. You're done. Her face drained of color. The attorney sputtered. This is defamation. You'll be sued. But Abigail cut him off, voice venomous. You're bluffing, Michael. You think you can scare me with your little flash drive? The door swung open. Chris Novak strode in, flanked by 2 FBI agents and a DOD investigator in a crisp suit. Abigail Harper, an agent said, badge flashing, we have warrants to search Apex Industrial and seize all records tied to government contracts. Chris dropped a thick folder on the table, his voice ice. This is just the start. Ethan Caldwell and your CEO are being detained as we speak. Grand jury's already rolling. Abigail lunged for her phone, but an agent intercepted it. Her attorney stammered, but the DOD investigator cut through. We've got whistleblower testimony on the brake components. Soldiers' lives were at risk, Ms. Harper. That's not a lawsuit. That's prison. Mike stood, heart pounding but head high. Abigail's glare burned, but he met it. You thought I'd walk away with nothing, he said quietly. I'm walking away with the truth. He didn't wait to see her cuffed. His part was done. 6 months later, Mike stood outside a factory, reborn. Apex's manufacturing arm, gutted by scandal, had been bought by its workers with state backing. They'd christened it Heartland Legacy Manufacturing, a nod to Jim Callahan's honest roots. The arrests had dominated headlines. Abigail and Ethan faced trial, the CEO turned state's evidence, and the pension fund, though battered, was partially restored, saving retirees from ruin. Mike had helped design Heartland's new financial systems. Every process transparent, every number accountable. Today, he signed out as a consultant, his work here complete. All set, Mr. Thompson? Asked Tyler, the security guard who'd once escorted him out of Apex, now grinning at the front desk. Yep, Mike said, handing over his visitor badge. Outside, Lauren waited in her car, her smile proud. You did it, Dad, she said as he climbed in. Jim would have loved this. Mike glanced back at the factory, its smokestacks humming with purpose. It wasn't about me, he said. It was about them, the workers, the soldiers, your mom. That night, Mike packed away his Apex files, the battle finally behind him. Tomorrow, he'd start as a part-time ethics consultant for a manufacturing group, teaching companies to keep their books clean. At 58, he'd found his final chapter, not as a victim, but as a man who'd fought for what was right and won. Sarah's photo watched from the mantel, her smile saying everything. He'd kept the numbers honest. He'd kept her faith. In the heart of Waukesha, Wisconsin, Mike Thompson's story unfolds like a quiet storm. A tale of one man's stand against a tide of corporate greed that threatened to drown the dreams of workers, retirees, and soldiers. At 58, Mike, a senior financial controller at Apex Industrial, faced a betrayal that could have broken him. After 18 years of keeping the company's books pristine, he was fired in a cold, calculated move by executives Abigail Harper and Ethan Caldwell. But Mike's journey through loss, fear, and relentless pursuit of justice offers profound lessons that resonate deeply with American values of integrity, resilience, and community. His story isn't just a corporate thriller. It's a testament to the power of doing what's right, no matter the cost, and it speaks to the heart of anyone who's ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or called to stand up for something bigger than themselves. Mike Thompson's story isn't just a tale of corporate fraud, it's a mirror for our times. In an era of distrust where headlines scream of scams and betrayal, Mike's stand feels like a battle cry. For the factory worker clocking overtime, the veteran guarding our freedoms, the parent teaching their kid to tell the truth, this story says you're not alone. Your fight matters. Your truth can change the world. As Mike drives into the Wisconsin dusk, his pickup carrying the weight of Apex's secrets, we're left with a challenge. To be the Mike Thompsons of our own lives, to hold fast to integrity, to find courage in our pain, and to build communities where justice, however hard won, prevails.